All right. So, if you've ever said that LinkedIn ads don't work, our guest today will prove you wrong. He's built a 7-figure agency helping B2B brands drive demand without chasing leads. 1,000 plus inbound meetings later, Justin Rowe is here to share what really works on LinkedIn. So Justin, thank you so much for coming on, and we're glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, and this should be a fun conversation about B2B and LinkedIn, which I am very knowledgeable about.
Perfect. So I've read a lot about your strategy and how you're integrating SEO. I even wrote an article about you on LinkedIn. But just before we jump onto that, if you don't mind giving me and the whole audience just a quick overview of how you went from food truck all the way to going to LinkedIn ads.
Yeah. So I actually did come from the service industry, the restaurant industry. I was a restaurant manager, and I was kind of looking for additional opportunities in this world, and I came to LinkedIn as kind of a job seeker looking for additional opportunities. I took a rather aggressive approach, I guess, now looking back at it. I sent probably 50 connection requests a day to my target audience, which was anyone I thought could have opportunities, so district managers, company owners, HR managers, recruiters, things like that. Brought them into my network, and I was starting to post consistently, just kind of documenting my journey, where I was at that point. Weirdly enough, I discovered that LinkedIn was this great place where you could connect with people from all over in different position titles and whatnot. It was pretty easy to find them, easy to get connected, and so through that effort, I actually became a part owner of a restaurant franchise. So instead of just finding job opportunities, I found investor opportunities, investors who were looking to build restaurant franchise and were looking for operators. And through my little process on LinkedIn, I'd become a visible person in my space. So with that, I did move over into part ownership of a small sandwich shop franchise, Potbelly Sandwich Shop. And then I kind of latched on to the power of LinkedIn and started a side hustle. So I started helping other people do the same thing with LinkedIn that I did, and that turned into a LinkedIn lead generation agency, and that's kind of the initial startup that grew to about $1 million ARR before it was mostly acquired by a data-heavy investor. Then after that point, that's when we made the pivot into LinkedIn ads, and through that process, I was kind of the solo marketer in our org that was doing all of our marketing. So I kind of fell in love with just the full spectrum of marketing, what it takes to move an organization forward, from freelancer to startup to kind of more of a growth motion. And yeah, now here we are today. We have about almost 200 active clients. We've run LinkedIn ads for maybe 500 plus B2B companies, investor backed, and we have a LinkedIn ads platform called Demand Sense that we've been developing as well.
Nice. Well, that's a lot to unpack. But even in terms of the videos too, we started off as well just doing video content, short videos on Instagram and on TikTok, and that's how we got our client base. And I saw that you're kind of famous also for doing videos on LinkedIn. Why did you start off doing videos as opposed to doing text or any other type of medium?
Initially, probably for the first year, it was text-only posts. It actually, took a while for me to cross over into video. And so when I was doing the text-only, it was actually getting really good reach. But I started seeing other content creators on LinkedIn putting out video, and I noticed that they were getting more traction, more visibility. It seemed like that was a preferred medium, and that was way outside my comfort zone. I'm an introvert. I would prefer not to do that, but I wanted to move the business forward any way I could, and so I kind of decided that I would give video a try. And so it was really awkward and weird at first. I had a terrible webcam, no mic, and it was cell phone videos and a cheap webcam. But eventually, just getting through those reps, I found easy, affordable solutions to make things look better. And I doubled down on that multiple times, and it's been a good choice to go kind of video first for the most part. But it didn't start that way.
Yeah, because that was the first question that I wanted to ask before I went into the strategy. because it kind of hit close to home. Creating video content is so daunting even for me. I can relate. I'm very introverted. And but I saw that just text at one point was doing very, very well. And the reason that we started to do video content was because we heard of like I think it's called like the 7 hour rule, or the 7 touch point rules, where people become more familiar with you if you're doing video content. They know how you talk. They kind of like can grasp your personality a little bit better. Before going into the strategy part, did you ever find that it helped a lot better than creating text videos so people could get acquainted with you, or are they kind of even on LinkedIn?
So when I first started, the text posts alone would get more impressions, but then the video posts would get higher engagement. So at first when I started it, it was kind of like I was balancing it. I was still doing mostly text, and then I started doing video. But then I started to see a change where the people that were engaging with the video seemed to kind of accelerate like faster into like wanting to talk, and then when I actually got them on the call, it's like through those video posts, they knew more about me, my philosophy, the strategy, where I came from, and so it really felt like the close rates of those was a lot higher because the video content really allowed them to, I guess, binge and understand more. So once I started seeing that, then I guess I kind of doubled down on video more. I started publishing those into YouTube, which I really like because then it's a bingeable platform. Like if I found that if people discover my YouTube channel, the close rates of those and the deal sizes of those, it's almost like an accelerator. If they binge a bunch of those and then they come in like really hot, ready to talk, ready to close. They have a handful of questions, but it's like it humanizes the brand. It gives it. You can go way more in depth. Writing great copy for like a text-only post is actually like really hard. I feel like doing video can be a little more forgiving. I mean, it doesn't have to be the most viral, catchy video. Like if you go just talk about the things that you're knowledgeable about, like you can actually go a lot further with that. And it's not overly hard. So I almost feel like it started to be an easier way, because instead of having to write some eloquent post, I can get on camera and I can talk about it, and I can do that decently well, and then some easy editing and whatnot, make it look nice.
Yeah. I'm always super bullish on video. It's hard to do at first, and it's a little bit awkward to do, but I think it pays dividends in the long run.
Yeah, the big things I saw was you can get a really nice webcam for like under $100. You can get a nice camera for like $100. That alone, or even nowadays, your cell phone can be a camera. And then now I use Descript AI like video editing, and that was a game changer. Because before that was like the hardest part, doing the editing. But now with like a program like Descript, you upload the video, it automatically gives you a transcript. You edit the transcript and edits the video. And it's basically like what Canva did for me. I wasn't a designer either, but Canva helped me make images and ads and things. And now a program like Descript helps like with video editing. And I was doing that myself for the longest time.
Yeah, and I also saw that most of your videos too, they're also use more vertical format than square format. Is there a particular reason for that, or is there one you recommend, even for ads as well?
Yeah, I would just say like you want a healthy mix. So the vertical format shows only on mobile. It doesn't, or it's more optimized for the mobile. I think the square formats also perform pretty decently well on desktop and mobile. So I would say probably a healthy mix, but I did notice for a while that like LinkedIn was actually like aggressively pushing mobile video more. So I started leaning into that. I think it's more balanced now. So maybe a more balanced approach might be decent.
Okay, perfect. So now in terms of when you were starting off versus going into the strategy, I want to keep this a little bit broad and then see where it goes from here. But when you were kind of mixing both the organic and the paid content, how did you start off, and what was kind of the mix of when you started to say, hey, let's start to go into ads, and when were you like, oh no, the organic is giving us what we're looking for?
So early on, it was mostly LinkedIn organic that was like my initial lever. So I was posting, I was doing the videos, and then I started branching off to like Upwork and freelance sites to try to get some additional gigs that way. And then eventually I got my first website. It was a $500 build from a college student. And I was running like $500 a month of Google ads to that. So initially, like, organic was working really well, but I was trying to figure out, like, if that's going to be scalable and consistent. I was really worried about putting all my eggs in one basket. Like, what if, I was also doing a lot of LinkedIn automation at the time. So I was thinking, like, what if my account gets, like, restricted? What if, like, the organic reach just gets completely throttled back? Like, how can I hedge my bets and kind of, like, find other ways to get leads, just so I have, some nice mix. So I had the organic, I had Upwork, I had slight Google ads, and then I found some decent success with Google, people looking for exactly what I was offering at the time. It was like LinkedIn lead generation. And then what I then realized is that I needed to do a better job of, like, retargeting. And so I came to LinkedIn ads initially as a retargeting play. So I had my organic motion. I had, like, I was sending people to the website from Upwork, from Google, but then, like, after their initial visit either to my company page on LinkedIn or the website, like, I didn't have anything in place to stay in front of them and, like, convert more of that. And from everything I had learned from, like, the B2C world, like, they're all about optimizing that funnel. So, like, they map out, like, all the drop-off points. They go to this page and they either, like, opt in, and they'll go here, or they don't, and you'll hit them with this. And then, like, so in my mind, I'm thinking, like, okay, I have this warm audience that I'm not doing anything with, so that becomes a priority. So I leaned into LinkedIn ads specifically for retargeting, and then that started to be a really good play where I would post organically, and then I would retarget. And my initial retargeting ads I made in Canva, and then I also was doing this thing before LinkedIn Thought Leader ads became a thing. I was taking screenshots of my best LinkedIn organic posts, and I was using those images as ads on the LinkedIn ad side. So I was running LinkedIn ads with screenshots of my organic post. And my thought process was, like, people don't want to see, like, ads from a company. They want to see, like, personal posts in their feed. So I was going to kind of trick them and show them my personal posts from the company account. And it was kind of interesting, because I think they actually in some ways work better than a thought leader ad, because it's a single image with a destination URL. They would see the post, they would click on it, they would click on the dots that say, like, read more, or they click on the place where you like it, but it was a screenshot. So when they clicked on that, it would send them to my website, and some of them were really mad about that, but like, it actually converted pretty well, and so I kept doing that. But then that actually turned into, eventually LinkedIn released thought leader ads, and I switched over to that. But yeah, that was my initial kind of foray into balancing organic and paid, and kind of the thought process around that.
A few ways to go into this, but just because you mentioned thought leader a few times too, LinkedIn, do you feel like there's a certain type of content, maybe it's thought leadership, maybe it's something else, but something that performs very, very well? Does it depend on the platform, or does it depend on the ICP, or is there another variable?
I mean, yes and no. Some of it depends on the variables, but I think there's a couple of consistent things that seem to perform very well across lots of industry. One of them is, I call it, like, giving the whole playbook away. So literally just, like, making content, telling people exactly how to do the things that clients pay you for, like, step-by-step process. Like, that seems to do really well. The people that have time but don't have budget, sure, they'll try to steal your frameworks, but the people that have, like, money but not enough time, or they think they want to do it themselves and then they realize it's more complex when they get, like, into your content more, they then want to talk to you and have you do that for them, because you've already convinced them that you're the expert. I also think, like, to that end, like, really valuable assets that people would pay for. So for me, one of the big things that worked was I had this 6-month LinkedIn retargeting framework, and so it was like, here's what you do each month to build out this 6-month framework, and at the end you have, it looks like this, and the image looked kind of cool, like, it looked kind of like, like funnelytics, whatever. It's like, here's your cold, here's your 90-day retargeting, here's your 30-day bottom of the funnel, and it had all the different ad layers, but then it would walk you through exactly how to do it. So that was one of my biggest lead magnets. And then I would also say, like, I guess third-party validation works really well. So it's like, even like this, like, it's one thing for me to come on as a talking head and say, hey, I'm the LinkedIn ads expert and this, and this. It's another thing to, like, be on podcasts and interviews and for other people to say, hey, here's a LinkedIn ads expert. who's going to talk to you about this, this, and this. Like any kind of content collaboration with other complementary businesses who are serving the same audience. If you can make co-branded content, like that works really well, because then you're also like, it's third-party validation, but then it's also tapping in to someone else's audience and sharing, kind of cross-pollinating. So I think those kind of plays seems to work really well across tons of industries.
Makes sense. Even the other thing that you mentioned too with the integration of Google and LinkedIn, and it's something that I honestly I never thought of the crossover that it could have. But I did see that you wrote like a very good post, a post that did very well actually about these two. Was there something in particular that stood out to you of combining both Google and LinkedIn, or why wasn't it like Facebook and LinkedIn?
So the two components that kind of led to this was, I guess, just in my own experiments with my own company, and then with working with other like B2B orgs. What I realized was LinkedIn ads is very misunderstood and underused. So and so people don't quite know like what's different about it. So to your point, like why LinkedIn ads retargeting versus like Facebook? The reason being, LinkedIn, to my knowledge, is one of the only platforms where you can actually not just retarget your 90-day website visitors. So all the platforms have the ability to have a pixel to see your 90-day website visitors and to create like warm retargeting audiences. All the platforms can do that. Now the problem I found is that in bigger brands with tons of organic, tons of SEO, maybe even like big Google ads traffic, their retargeting audience is like massive and a mess. Like it's a hodgepodge of quality. You wouldn't just want to retarget 90-day website visitors. Like you would have to have a massive budget to properly saturate that, and there's no good way to natively slice and dice that audience into just like the ICP fit. But for LinkedIn, that is the one platform you can do exactly that. You can say, okay, I want to retarget my 90-day website visitors, but only the ones company size 50 to 200 in these 6 industries, from these geos, with this seniority, in these job functions. So literally, like, I want to retarget my website visitors in the last 3 months, but only the ones that are qualified, who actually look like my ICP. There's no other platform that can do that natively, and that's really powerful. So then it got me thinking, like, that I had latched on to just LinkedIn retargeting. Actually, that was the first platform I did retargeting on. So to me, that was like an early discovery and something that I really liked. But then I realized in talking to other businesses, like, because most people are not using LinkedIn in that way, they had no idea that it had this kind of superpower. They were just thinking like, okay, yeah, LinkedIn's good for targeting, but it's really expensive. I've used it before. I've dropped tens of thousands of dollars, and it didn't amount to much. The other problem I saw with Google, which I was also leaning on as a foundational channel, is that the positives is it's high intent in-market search traffic. There's people actually searching for exactly what you sell every single day, and you can step in front of the traffic. The bad part is 2 things. One is you can't qualify them previously to the click, like you're kind of gauging implied intent based on the search. And then the second part is it's highly competitive traffic. They're viewing your page plus 3 or 4 other competitors, and so your opportunity to convert that traffic highly depends on that initial first impression of your website compared to the other players, which for a small person, a small startup like mine, I could not compete with them. But then I realized, like, okay, well, if I can get the high intent in-market search traffic, and then I can qualify that traffic and just stay in front of the qualified prospects, and then dominate like them in retargeting, even if I don't leave the best first impression compared to my 3 bigger competitors that they likely visit, I actually think I have a really good shot of wrestling them away from those over the next 90 days by making sure that they see really great, like my best organic content over the next 90 days. And that theory, I believe, was proven out multiple times that was a really good combination. So it worked for me. And then, surprising or not surprising, that same logic applies really well to most B2B orgs. They're spending a lot on Google, they have SEO, they find retargeting in general to be like hit or miss because their audiences are so big, and they didn't understand or realize that LinkedIn could cut through all of that, qualify their traffic, and just be retargeting high fit prospects on LinkedIn. and that would be an ROI enhancer. So then that became kind of like my go-to rally cry to help educate people on why LinkedIn was so successful. But then also I realized LinkedIn isn't great by itself. So I need my prospects or my clients to understand that LinkedIn needs to be like anchored and done in tandem with other channels that help fuel to that. Otherwise, if they come to us, they don't have SEO, they don't have Google in place, they just buy LinkedIn and they think they're going to get the same results that like we're getting for ourselves. Like that's not going to happen. So I did it to help educate people about LinkedIn, to push ourselves forward, but also to help educate about what's needed for LinkedIn to be successful. But that's kind of how that came about, and yeah, it's a good motion.
Yeah, and even with the retargeting aspect too, would you consider that it's like that was like the main area that you were able to get most of the conversions coming in, especially within the 90-day layer?
Yeah, I would say the retargeting layer was my primary use for LinkedIn, and that it really was. And I think, and again, like, I think Google plus LinkedIn retargeting works for that reason, because LinkedIn cold by itself, even if you can get the exact people who look like your ICP, there's no indicator that they're currently in market, that they're looking for a solution, that they're like, going to buy this kind of service in the next 90 days. So if you just go cold LinkedIn and LinkedIn retargeting, the sales cycle is going to be really long. And so maybe you don't see a ton of conversions in those 90-day retargeting because you're getting ice cold prospects with no indicator of being in market. You're retargeting them for 90 days, hoping that you can convert some of them that are in market, but the vast majority will drop off. Now compare that to the front end being paid search, where these are clicks that people are in market looking for what you're doing, and then you stay in front of them for the next 90 days when they are very likely to be in market making buying decisions. That's a great combination. So I really think like that balance has to work. And then there's still this long-term play. Like there's still a big group of those people who maybe are curious but they're not in buying mode, and then you need something longer term, which is when I go back to organic. In those 90-day retargeting, if they're not going to buy, the other big accomplishment I want to have is to funnel them into one of my organic communities. If I can get them to follow my LinkedIn profile, my company page, subscribe to my YouTube channel, join my newsletter, then I have a way of staying in touch and nurturing them for like months and months or forever, after they drop out of my paid ads web, because it's not reasonable to be able to retarget them and pay for that, for a year. Like that's why the 90-day window is usually like a go-to. But in B2B, most of your people aren't in buying mode in 90 days, and so you do need a healthy mix there.
Yeah, and do you also, I'm assuming you also get a lot of pushback too, of people saying, I've tried LinkedIn ads, it's very expensive to get a conversion. Yeah. How do you kind of deal with that timeline when you're speaking to prospects of what they can expect at each layer of how much, how into the ecosystem that they are?
So the two approaches I usually take with this is, the first, I usually outline and make content around like the reasons why LinkedIn didn't work for people. So a lot of times, like, I go through, I've seen enough of it, I've talked to enough businesses or seen this where I know what they tried before and I know why it didn't work. So usually I'll go through that and I'll be like, okay, chances are you've tried LinkedIn before and you thought it was expensive, you've launched a cold, lead gen campaign, you either didn't get, leads at the same price that you were getting on Facebook, or the leads that you're getting, like, didn't show up to the calls. Like, this is why that happened. You're advertising to an ice cold audience with no indicator they're in market. You're putting a lead gen form in front of them. They didn't even visit your website. So even if they do fill out that form, the chances that they're ready to talk and show up on a call and make a purchasing decision is like next to zero. So of course, like, you didn't see success. And of course, your sales team hates those leads. Like, at the very least, if you just took that lead gen form and put it in the retargeting layer and only showed the lead gen form to people that were on your website or your company page, you'd at least dramatically improve like the show up rates and the lead quality. And so I walk through some of those, and then the next thing I do is I usually like lay out 3 scenarios, because people do come and they'll say like, hey, how long does it take for LinkedIn to be successful? What results can I expect? And so typically I'll say, instead of just saying it depends, I'll say, okay, usually one of 3 things. Either you have a really healthy ecosystem already, you've invested in paid search, you have consistent conversions, you have SEO, you have organic, and now you're going to add LinkedIn, we could start in retargeting and you could see results within 45 days, I bet. Like, that's a pretty safe bet. Now, the second scenario, which is pretty common, is like we have paid search is working, pretty decently. It needs some work. We do have some SEO. It's, maybe mid-level. We have some other efforts, and now we're going to add on LinkedIn. Okay, so LinkedIn's not working in the silo. It's got some help. It's not a robust ecosystem, but it's not starting from nothing. I would say give me 90 days and maybe $5,000 budget a month, and we could probably see meaningful progress or like initial conversions at a reasonable rate within that time frame. And then the other scenario would be you haven't figured out paid search yet, you're not getting consistent conversions, you don't have robust SEO. We're basically starting LinkedIn from scratch in a silo. Like, I mean, you could spend, I don't know, $5,000 to $10,000 a month for like 6 months before you're seeing like really meaningful like traction and data and conversions, because you're building it all from scratch, and it's going to be really expensive. In that case, I would advise those people usually not to start on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not like the greatest first place to start, unless the only time LinkedIn's a great first place to start is if you have proven success organically on LinkedIn and you're looking to amplify that organic LinkedIn success with the paid side. Otherwise, I would send you to Google and say you need to get started on paid search and then come back to LinkedIn retargeting. Don't try to start your journey of paid marketing with LinkedIn. That's usually a mistake.
Mm. We also have a client too, who he's in B2C, and he's really amassed like a lot of he's done quite a bit of ad spend on his Google. Have you ever had clients that come up to you also and they're like, or prospects would come up to you and say, hey, we're in B2C, but I also see that there could potentially be potential in LinkedIn, and how would you approach that?
Usually what I look at, and the reason that LinkedIn makes more sense for B2B usually is like the LTV. So if you're B2C, but you're selling like a higher ticket service or product or something like that, then I do think there's a reasonable chance of success. And some of this has been like, we have kind of like coaches or consultants who are selling to like individuals and not businesses. We also have like, course creators and things like that. And so I'd say if like the lifetime value of a sale is like, healthy, like maybe ideally more than like 10,000, but I've seen it work with like, in the 5 to 10,000 range, like might be a little dicey. But where LinkedIn would not, like I can't imagine LinkedIn being very successful for someone trying to sell like individual apparel or like, shirts, hats, things like that to people. Now, if you want to go after like big companies and make like plays in bulk to like distributors or things like that, LinkedIn could be the answer. But like, selling to individual consumers for low ticket pricing under like $5,000 LTV, that's gonna be like really hard to get a ROI. I would send you to Facebook. You'd have a much better chance of selling there. But on LinkedIn side, if you're selling to professionals, if you have something I guess that's the way to think about it. Like this platform, it's different than you might be selling to people, but if those people are professionals, are a known position title at a specific, like at a certain kind of industry or company size, and you have a really clear vision, and that's what you're selling. Like, I could see a product working if I'm selling to like marketing leaders, to marketing leaders of like companies in the 550 to 200 size, and it's like priced at like a couple $1,000s at least. Like, okay, maybe that'll work, but a lot of the other consumer ones like would be pretty dicey.
Yeah, it was just interesting because I'm always like, I think LinkedIn is always B2B, but interesting to hear other perspectives of how it could potentially even be into the B2C world. You mentioned a little bit too about organic, or you actually mentioned quite a bit about the organic, but when you're working with B2B and let's say that they have like no foundation at the moment, but they might have like gotten some funding and they're like, we want to sell to like a technology company, but we at the same time need to figure out exactly who our ICP is. And correct me if I'm wrong with this, but from my experience, I always find that like the more specific that you can get your ICP, the better that it is. So how specific do you usually go with the ICP for your clients, and how does that work, especially when you're creating the targeted content for them organically?
Yeah, so this is one, and early on when we were selling to mostly like, I guess, smaller startups, size 1 to 10, 1 to 20, we'd get this a lot more than I think we do now, where it's like, we can sell to anyone who has a website or anyone, and it's like, okay. So basically, what this is going to turn into is market research, because yeah, there's an industry that you do better with. There's a company size that you're going to see more traction with. There's specific like people within those companies that you're going to resonate more with. So I think it can be a little of both. Like when we started out too, I had no idea about our ICP. I thought, I'm doing LinkedIn lead generation, then I'm doing marketing. Like anyone with a business needs this, so I'm like, open to doing anything. And then what I quickly realized, like through the data, and LinkedIn's really good about this, I can see clearly, like, okay, if I actually have my conversion set up for call bookings and whatnot, like I start to see a really clear pattern. So even if I started broad, I would start to see, hey, 80% of my conversions are coming from these 6 industries. I'm doing really well with SaaS, IT consulting for some reason, marketing agencies, and financial management, or whatever, like industries. And so I'm going to start segmenting there. So yeah, our more mature clients, they usually come with a lot more like dialed in ideas of who they serve or what segments. Mm-hmm. And then that really helps like dial in, because it's one thing like if I'm selling LinkedIn ads to like 8 different industries of all different sizes, like yeah, how do you land on messaging? Like because someone with 20 employees has vastly different use case and need and pain points than the company with 500. Like the company with 500 and a small marketing team, they're looking for extensions, they're looking for like maybe staff aug, some strategy, but then the smaller companies are looking for like everything. I need a blueprint, I need someone who's gonna educate me, like different offers, different messaging. So yeah, I would say I try as much as possible to get down to like, what is the industry, what is the company size, who within those companies do you like, actually need to touch base. And then once you have that figured out, like the messaging almost takes care of itself, because it's like, okay, I very easily can talk to this specific like audience. I know their pain points, I know what's going to resonate with them, I have an offer or a solution that's kind of more geared towards that. And then now let me take my next one. Now I'm going to do IT consulting of this size, and I'm going to talk to them about this, and I'm going to offer them this. That becomes way easier. But yeah, the ones that do start broad, we try to make sure that they understand that's not how it should end up, and that we're going to start to share the insights. And as we get those insights, we'll start to pick out some of those segments and create more tailored messaging for those segments. And then that seems to be the best approach.
And this part might actually just be me being naive in the game, so bear with me with this question. But one of the questions that I've had, and I've like looked it up, and I've tried to like do as much research on it, is how do you kind of figure out if you're trying to target like a specific decision maker, like if you're trying to target like the CEO of a B2B IT consulting company, and you want to go kind of horizontal on that thing. Like I want to target all the CEOs of the B2B consulting companies on LinkedIn, versus I want to focus in on like, let's say this one company, and I'm going to target like all of the potential decision makers on that. How do you decide with those two approaches?
Yeah, so I would say I see it as a mix of both. So with LinkedIn native targeting, you can easily say, okay, this industry, these company sizes, and then specifically this job title, which is what you're talking about. And a lot of people use that. And then the other side would be more like, not just like one company, but it's usually like a list, and be like, okay, I'm going to handpick 100 companies, and within those 100 companies or 50 companies or 10 companies, I wouldn't mind saturating that entire group, like depending on the size. So if it's if you're targeting companies that have 100 people, and I have 50 companies, like actually wouldn't mind just like maybe not all the entry level or interns, but like manager, senior, director, VP, owner. Like I want to make sure that everyone on these 50 companies knows who we are, and if we can like snag 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these like companies, that would be a big win. So yeah, that would be more of like the pretty much like more like the account-based marketing, the ABM approach, where we say I have these specific companies and I want audience penetration. I want these guys to know who I am. And so for those, I would say like usually, and if it's bigger companies, yeah, it might not be reasonable to target everyone. It'd be like buying committees. So like, okay, I typically sell into the marketing leader or like the CEO. And so in this scenario, I have these 50 companies. I'm going to target all of the marketing seniority of director level and above in the marketing function. And I'm going to like penetrate that entire like buying committee with these companies. So like all of the senior marketing operations and maybe like the executive level. And I'm going to like penetrate more of that decision maker. I also think that works really well with retargeting. Like, so say you have, you're very specifically targeting maybe CEOs of a certain industry and company size with your cold audience, but then once they visit the website and you're retargeting them, I'm okay expanding that and saying, okay, now initially I just want the CEO to see this, but if someone from this company has been to the website, I'm okay like then expanding to the other relevant decision makers, and I think that can kind of accelerate the deal. And I would say the same thing for like current pipeline. So if they've booked a call with you, the company's on your radar, like I would continue to show ads to that group, and if possible, expand to other relevant decision makers or the other people that are relevant in there, because I think it can help foster conversation and accelerate that deal if they get more buy-in from other people there. So I guess that's how I would think about separating that a little bit.
Yeah, that question was always on my mind, and I just didn't know how the right answer of how to approach it, but thank you for that.
Of course.
The other few questions I had to wrap it up soon, but it's in terms of the content that you're creating and that your team's creating as well. Whenever that you're creating content, organic or for LinkedIn ads, is there a certain method of how you distribute the content, like of how you create content buckets of what you're going to talk about? Or do you do kind of test free-for-all at the beginning and then kind of see what works and then start to create the buckets?
We've gone through different like methods in past. One of the things I usually keep coming back to is that there should be kind of like these content pillars. I think I've heard the term like around, and so I kind of decide on like what are the main things that we or a client should be making content around, and kind of define and agree on those pillars. So for us, it might be like, LinkedIn ads, like expertise, like optimizing LinkedIn ads accounts. There's also like, I think, I guess defining those initial pillars, and you might have 4 or 5, and then they kind of give you like a jumping off point. So if you know the 4 or 5 areas that you really want to be creating something consistently around, then you're kind of, I guess on the back end for each of those, you try to come up with as many ideas as possible, prioritize the top ones, and then you kind of have this like, I guess a better building block of what to do versus like early when I was doing it was like, okay, I got nothing planned for this week. What am I doing? What do I need to make content? But if you have the pillars, it's like, okay, I'm going to talk about this, and around this topic, I have these 5 ideas, or maybe I have 2, and I need to like schedule some time just to flesh out additional ones. But I think that works pretty well. And then for distribution, I do think like that's pretty important too. Like how it's one thing to make the content, it's another thing to like, how do I get the most out of this motion? Because it is like, it can be a lot to make a post, to do the video, for it to get shared on one platform, to get viewed by like 10 people at first when you're getting traction, and it can feel like, I guess like almost like you're beating your head against the wall. So one of the things like I did early on that I thought was useful is like, how can I get the most out of these videos that I'm going to make? If I'm going to do this, like I want to make sure I get them. So I want to publish them to YouTube where they can live forever, where they're bingeable. And I love that idea because on LinkedIn and almost any other social, you post, and as amazing as that post is, it gets buried in the feed. And even if it was a great idea and you want to repost that later, like you're starting from scratch. Whereas on YouTube, it's like there's a playlist and it exists and it has SEO capabilities. So it's like showing up on Google. So finding the right way to kind of disseminate the information, newsletter, blog, YouTube video, LinkedIn, Facebook, finding a way, what you're going to do with that motion, I think that's equally as important too.
And maybe you can like confirm or deny this theory, but this is a theory that I always had. You're like, if you post like short content, even if it's short content on LinkedIn, then it's kind of like the gateway drug of people coming into your long form content, and then the long form content, maybe you might not get that client within the first year or 2 years, but eventually like people will start to get funneled into the long form and it'll be bigger deals. Is that necessarily true, or is that completely off the rails?
I think it's hard to prove, but I like the logic, and I've thought very similar. And one of the ways that I kind of reasoned it with myself was that like people don't know you and they don't trust you, so they're not going to give you like 10 minutes of their time, even on like watching a video, or even 5 minutes of their time. But if you make something short and punchy that's 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and it's good, they'll give you that. And if they like that, and then they see another video of you that is 5 minutes, they might actually watch that. And so then like through short term to short clips to kind of get their attention, I think opens the door to them being more willing to sit through a longer video, because it is hard, like in the longer form videos, like the value of that is like, you know, they kind of have to like trust you a little bit to stay with the journey to hear all that, versus like, yeah, if you can get like something short and punchy in 15 seconds, like, oh, okay, you made an impression, and then maybe I'll watch that longer one. So I do think you're right about that. And I structure that in our funnels the same way. If I'm running a cold video ad, I tend to want those to be shorter, like, you know, under 60 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. And then for retargeting videos, I'm okay with them being 2 minutes, 5 minutes, you know, like longer, because I think we've earned that right at that point for more of their attention. And so I followed the similar logic.
Yeah, I saw one of Chris Walker's videos that did pretty well. That I was scrolling down, and I think he got a good amount of engagement. I think it was like 1,000 in engagement. I don't know the impressions, but it was like a video of him going on like a 7-minute explanation. And I was like, if I didn't know him, there's no way I would have like sat and watched that full 7 minutes. So it's a good theory too. And in the case of YouTube as well, you also see that as being a formula, kind of like with the entire funnel, starting off Google, retargeting on LinkedIn, and then maybe having the long form on YouTube, or is there like a mastermind plan in the long term for YouTube?
I have YouTube in a couple of buckets. So one, I sit it in a similar bucket to my LinkedIn organic, to my newsletter. I view it as like a almost like a community. So it's something that kind of like is just like always on and is there for people to visit. I've tested on and off with like YouTube retargeting. So they visit, and it's done through like the same Google Ads Manager. So if they visit your website, the same way you can do Google Ads like display retargeting, you could do YouTube retargeting. So if they're on your website and then they're on YouTube, you could show them those videos. That's worked pretty well. And then I do think of it as a retargeting, but I also more primarily group it as like a community, a place like that people can binge watch some of your stuff. And then my theory, which is hard to prove, is that, and from everything I've heard from sales, is that if one of our prospects has discovered or stumbled on our YouTube channel, they tend to be accelerated through the deal stages faster, have a higher close rate. So they've latched onto that, and throughout the sales process tend to intentionally send like YouTube videos like, hey, I know you guys were thinking about this, here's a YouTube video on that topic, because the idea is, if they see that channel, if it piques their curiosity, if they dig into other videos, they usually come back a little harder and faster through the sales pipeline, and so we intentionally expose them to that. So I've seen it as like a trust builder or a deal or accelerator, I guess.
Perfect. And the last question I wanted to ask, this is kind of more of a personal question, but if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what piece of advice would you give him?
I guess a couple of things. I think at 25, your brain is finally solidifying a little bit, and you might start to know that you don't know everything, which is helpful. It's like a good starting place. So I was definitely cocky. I was definitely arrogant, cocky. I thought like I knew way more than I did. Now at my age, I'm 39 now, I'm very aware that I still don't know a ton. So if I go back to 25, it was like just do the work, get hands-on, as much hands-on experience as you can. You are smart, but you don't know everything, and you have so much to learn. Your best like effort would be identifying the things that you're like actually weak on and trying to strengthen those. Yes, lean into your current strengths, but be utterly aware of your shortcomings. You have a lot of them. Identify them and either like just avoid things that need that, or intentionally work on those. But I guess the big one is just like, don't be so cocky, don't be so arrogant. You don't know what you don't know yet. Be humble and get hands-on experience, and try to be helpful in like client situations or whatnot. Like, obsess about client results, and the rest of the good stuff will happen if you're like in that world. Versus like, I guess like most of it, I was just like, can I build this and sell this and ship this? But it's like the client actual results was kind of secondary in some of that, and that was backwards thinking.
I agree. That's also a good advice too for LinkedIn ads. Stay humble.
Yeah.
Try
Yeah.
everything out and see what works.
You don't know what you don't know.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for your time, Justin. And if anybody is, if you want to put anywhere people can find you, where can they find you?
You can go to Impactable.com. That's our main website. We do LinkedIn ads, paid search, a handful of other things, but those are the main things we're known for. Look me up on LinkedIn, Justin Rowe, Rowe. I should be the first one that pops up. And then, like I mentioned in here, I'm pretty proud of our YouTube channel. It's got like 400 plus videos. It's got an actual like how-to from start to finish, how to create an ad account, your first ad, creatives, things like that. So it's like a free course that other people might charge like hundreds of dollars for. So those are the 3 best places to probably find me.
Perfect. Justin Rowe, CEO of Impactable.com. Thank you so much for jumping on today.
Of course. Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks.